Check 1 2.
Livermore Live Music presents Spotlight, shining a light on Livermore's incredible music scene. Here are your hosts, Rob Allen and Kevin Snyder.
We're coming to you from the studios of Advanced Creative here in Livermore. Today, the spotlight is on Crawdad Republic. We've got our special guests, John Williams and Dave Haberman. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. I'd like to apologize up front for my voice. Somebody took it.
Yeah, right. You sound a little scratchy today, but actually, that's a segue to the first order of business before we actually get started, which is we do have some refreshments for you that hopefully will help with the voice a little bit. So today we have two things. We like to have something appropriate to the guest. And of course, we had to start. The only thing appropriate for you guys would have been We're All Gonna Die IPA from Altamont Brewing. So cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, you. Sloucha.
Yeah. Chink, chink. And then I will also, we brought something else special. So this other thing, I got to tell you, my wife is a pal. I mean, she's my best friend in the whole world, and she's a pal.
Your wife, cookies. Yeah, your wife is hot.
She is fantastic. Yeah, and she is, and she's hot also, right?
I know.
And the other day, she came in the house, and she knows I like scotch. She doesn't care for it, but she knows I like scotch. And she said, well, I saw this bottle that looked interesting, so I bought it for you. And indeed, she bought me a Glenfiddich 14 that was finished in cognac, or a cognac barrel.
Hey.
So I've never had that before, but I brought it, and I have a little sip for everyone. Just
Shout
to
out
see
KA, let's get loose.
So do you sip it, or do you party it?
I would sip it. I would sip it.
No, it's not a shotter. It's a sipper. Before we sip this, I just have to apologize for Dave's voice today.
Yeah.
Because it's really going to...
put a damper on things.
I had not noticed.
Okay.
The one other thing that we always do is I mentioned something of a humorous nature, but this is not funny. This is serious. I'm pretty sure that I heard a woodpecker calling me paranoid by Morse code.
we got the buttons in effect.
Very well done.
So I always like to kind of mention what we're going to try to cover today. So we're going to talk to you guys. We want to start off in just a second by making sure we talk about all the members of Crawdad. We only have room for two at a time, but we want to make sure everybody gets recognized. We're going to talk to you guys individually about your backgrounds and your musical backgrounds and how you got into all of this, and then how Crawdad Republic formed and all of that. We want to talk about your music, your live performances, your songwriting process, your recording, and so forth. And then we're going to talk about your plans for the future, which I know you've got a whole bunch of things in the work. So that's kind of the schedule for today. Let's get started. John, tell us, a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point.
So before we get started, I've actually prepared some questions for you.
Oh, okay.
So
turning the tables.
I'd like to just ask real quick, how did this whole podcasting get started for y'all? What was the inspiration behind this website and the podcast?
Well, I'll address that. I thought it was my idea, but then Rob said, "Oh, Doug mentioned that a long time ago." So,
well, I think it's like Newton and Leibniz, right? I mean, multiple people can come up with similar ideas. Sort of, it's in the wind. It's at the it's the right time. I think both of you guys.
I just thought it would be a good idea for a place where people in Livermore or all around the country can listen and find out what's going on here as far as the bands and the venues, and just promote Livermore live music through this podcast, and they're very popular.
I have a follow-up question to that. You mentioned that it was Doug's idea first. Who's Doug?
That's a good question. So we're actually going to talk about Doug in just a second here, so we'll come back to that.
Yeah,
so I only asked not to put y'all on blast or get you, but as just a big fan of what y'all are doing, we just want to say thank you so much for continuing to do this.
Big time.
The website is transformative. It's the most essential piece to our community to build up what we all love and have going. So thank you, and we're humbled to be be here.
Well.
So Skull.
Cheers again. Thank you. Yeah.
Which one am I grabbing, John?
You know what? You choose.
Yeah, you have to pick, right?
John's always looking for reasons to cheers.
So you brought it up. So I'll mention quickly. I mean, we have some. So first of all, Livermore Live Music is not just Kevin and I. There's a community of people that got together, sort of late last year, late 2018, and started talking about how to promote live music and recognize the live. I mean, I didn't make the live music scene in Livermore. It's been going on, but how to promote it and make it better. And there's people from venues and bands. John, you were involved from the very beginning. I'll mention Mark Claren, Dane Stark, Anna Steiger, Meshack Jackson, and I know I'm forgetting some people, but there's a bunch of folks who were involved in early meetings where we talked about what can we do to create this atmosphere that promotes and recognizes it. So just trying to raise the tide for everyone and bring more people out, recognize what a great thing live music in Livermore is, was a big part of the effort. And honestly, looking down the road, we're hoping to make Livermore a legit music destination nationally known, right? So that can't happen overnight, and we can't make it happen by ourselves, but we're hoping these little pieces of it will turn it into where when people in, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, for example, are thinking about where to go for vacation, they'll go, well, we could go to any of these wine countries in Livermore, or we can go to Livermore and there's wine country and there's this live music scene, and we can go have a live music vacation. And we can go see, we'll stay there for a week and we can go see 15 bands in a week, and we know how to find them through the livermorelivemusic.com.
The
website.
Austin of wine country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's the right phrase. Yeah.
So you mentioned Oshkosh, but I also want to give a shout out to Spring Green and Baraboo.
And Bagosh. Oshkosh, you can't say Bagosh without Oshkosh.
that's true. Right.
That's true.
Shout out
But
Bagosh.
I do have
Rest in
family in
peace.
those two other towns.
Right. And we may as well mention Boise because you've got family there too. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well. Yeah.
Well, let's bring it back to, I'll be the dungeon master here.
I
And we'll
got
bring it
family
back
in
to-
more places.
Roll for perception.
So John, again,
yeah.
a little bit about your background.
So thanks for asking. I grew up, as I'm sure we all did, I know Dave did, sort of a musical family. I was really lucky. Like, my memories of childhood are going to music festivals, specifically one called the Strawberry Music Festival. It's just like, for me, that was Disneyland. I remember being a small child running around in a meadow, seeing live music, just getting to explore. And so this idea of live music has always been sort of in my bones and my blood. Sort of only the first generation. My father, Kenny, the musician in town, long time. My mother plays guitar. She owns one. Well, if we put her to the test, she could play, but she doesn't actively do it. So I kind of grew up with these things with strings on the walls, and I always wanted to experiment with them and bang on them and play them, and never was much good at them, but I loved them, right? Growing up, and so for me, it was kind of like, it was family business, It was. I remember, other than going to the music festival in town, there was something called the Martinez Music Society. My folks were great friends with friends out in Martinez, and what they had was sort of similar to sort of what Livermore looks like now. It's like a bunch of musicians would show up at this pizza place and they would rotate playing, and I remember being a child just running around outside playing with friends, and it just sort of felt like I was destined to do something like that. And it didn't feel bigger or smaller than anything, but I should play and I should sing on a microphone, and I should do that. And so moving on from there, there's a whole story that our lives kind of tell, but to kind of get the short version of it is, I learned how to play like one song on the guitar in third grade, and I played that song for 3 years,
Right.
and that was that, and I met a couple other friends, one of which plays in Crawdad Republic, named Brandon Olivo, and another buddy, John Baracia, who, with those two folks, we ended up forming a band called Normal Like You in middle school throughout high school. Right. It wasn't called that at first. But long story short, I met these two friends, and they play guitar much better than I did. So, we started thinking, well, what can we do? Let's try to play in a band. And the pinnacle moment that made that happen was Brandon Olivo, for his birthday, rented a drum kit. And so we had a drum kit in a garage, and it was sort of like, everybody call all your friends, and it was experiment rotation, see what happens. Because prior to that, we were banging on pots and pans and playing and stuff. And after that, it was sort of like, oh, like this sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And me being the worst of the three guitar players, I was like, I guess I'm playing bass. So I got down on bass. I was not happy about it, to be honest.
Story.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just true. I'm so actually happy that I ended up playing bass. So how this happened was, Meanwhile, in school, I'm taking violin lessons, you know, in the school system, which I'm so thankful that Livermore had at the time in 4th grade. 5th grade playing clarinet, 6th grade playing saxophone, 7th and 8th grade marching band and all that. So I'm so grateful for that because that was huge. I was like, learn the rules, play the game. I hated the rules. I hated the game. I loved making... I like to play music when I didn't know what I was doing, when I made sounds that I didn't understand what the names of them were. Like that's what school wasn't my thing. Like this was my thing because like it could be good, you know, and no one could say it's objectively like a 95%. It was like, no, it was my thing, right? Yep. So, you know, moving along, continued to play with these kids, and I played bass, and I took lessons from Jim Hurley, local legend in town, fiddle player. He
influenced like 2 generations of musicians in Livermore, right?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing human, still influencing generations
on his third,
of humans,
maybe his fourth,
and just an incredible person and a wonderful musician. So he kind of taught me that the bass wasn't a second place trophy, as I thought when I showed up to play it, right? And I'm so appreciative of that. So from there, you know, sort of the rest is history, playing in punk rock bands and sleeping on some floors and, you know, getting into in and out of things, and life takes you where it takes you, eventually kind of meeting this. Well, I guess I still met this guy when we were playing in the band Normal Like You, and it's funny because I think you met my dad first.
Yeah. Actually, when I first moved to California, I went to a guitar show with your dad before I even knew who you were, like years before I knew who you were.
Now, Dave, how old were you when you moved to California?
I moved from Cape Cod, Massachusetts when I was in 5th grade.
Okay.
So I was about 10 years old. And that's the same year I started playing guitar. We had a membership at the Roanwood pool. We lived right over there.
Shout out Roanwood.
Yeah. So my dad plays, and he would always play, and he was the guy who would like bring his guitar to the pool. And at first I was like, oh man, here we go. Like, you know, like I'm new to the town. There's all of these like teenage girls at the pool, and I'm 10 years old, and my dad's over here just like hollering away.
Shout out Mr. H.
And then one day I got out of the pool, and there were all these 16-year-old girls watching my dad play guitar. And I don't remember this, but he's like, I will never forget it because you were so upset with me for like playing out loud, you know, like being the loud guy at the pool. And then you came out one day and you kind of just looked at your feet and you were like, yo, can you teach me how to do that?
That's probably the experience of like 30% of the guitar players in the world is something like that.
Yeah, for sure. So so I started playing with my dad, and as he tells it, I don't mean this as an insult to him. He's like, I taught you until you were better than me, and then we put you in lessons. I would say for me, you know, John and I are both school teachers, and I taught 8th grade the last 3 years, right? And especially with teenagers and people who start getting older, like you go through a lot of things where you try a bunch of different things, and the one thing I just never stopped doing was play music. So it has sort of been like a constant companion, you know, and you try different things. There's been ups and downs. I was a definite metal dude for a while, which was great. And then I only played the blues for a minute, right? Like you very stalwartly. But then, you know, I met these guys when I was a junior.
These guys.
By these guys, I mean John and...
No, but there was already. There was already. I mean, I knew some of you back when you were in high school, and there was already the kernel of what became Crawdad Republic was already forming at that time.
Totally. So I was never in there. They had Normal Like You, their punk band, which was like a really big deal, right? And I was never part of that. But
punk band, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, we were all best friends, right? We hung out together all the time. So actually, I specifically remember sitting in your dad's shop, John's dad's shop, before it was even finished. And we had a couple of space heaters, and we were playing some like lame 90s song. But they taught me how to harmonize, right? So they were harmonizing together, and they taught me how to pick the 3-spot, right? And, you know, over the time that we played music together, over the years, especially advice from this guy here who had been doing it forever, like, hey, when you harmonize, like, try to make it sound like one voice, right?
Yes.
Like, try to match the diction and the timbre and all of those things. And so there was that. Then for a while they went off, did their band thing. I went to college. I exclusively used my guitar to try to pick up chicks because my roommate was much better looking than I was at the time. And
At the time, not so much now.
well, now I've got my I got the modeling career going, which has been really good. But when we all kind of came back from college and were hanging out again, I was actually living at our bass player's house. So as he started doing his thing, we all started playing more music together, and it just kind of gelled. And then we started a band called Of Shape and Sound.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience because we were all in our early 20s and fresh out the gates.
I will back up one step just to say the first time I met Dave that I recall was great because the first time I met Dave, I met Metallica Dave. And Metallica Dave was like, "What's up, bro?" And he pulled up in a minivan with a crate full stack in the minivan, right?
Yeah.
And you pulled up to Chad's house. You remember this?
Yeah.
And it was like a normal IQ practice, but I don't even know if we were called normal IQ at that point. I think it was pre that. And Dave pulls up and he's like, "Let's roll." And I don't think we even had conversation. That's what's so beautiful about music, right? Like we didn't know each other too much, but we're like, "What Metallica songs do you know?" He's like, "All of them." Yeah. And so we just played and got the cops called, and that was that, you know. And then from there, it's just so funny how, after that, I was like, dude, this guy's awesome. Let's hang, right?
Yeah.
And
So I want to talk a little bit more in a second about when Crawdad Republic gelled. But quickly, Of Shape and Sound was a transformative experience for all of you. And there were a bunch of other musicians there they're not in Crawdad Republic now, but they're still out there in the Livermore music scene.
Yeah, that began as a John solo project. I'll let you extrapolate.
I guess I'll say, we'll start with Normal Like You kind of fizzled out 2006, 2005. By the way, depending on when this drops, Normal Like You will be playing a reunion show at Altamont Beer Works on December 28th, 2019. So
this will drop before then. So
yeah, all right. So come on out, check it out. It should be
I already
fun.
told my son about it, and he goes, "What?"
Yeah, we're gonna try our best.
So
we'll try our best.
But talk a little bit now about how Crawdad Republic gelled. Where the name came from, and sort of when you decided. I mean, you have a very distinctive vibe that is just unique in Livermore. I think there's some other bands that are aspiring to be like that now. But you guys came out, of the gate, and you were a different thing than anybody else had heard in Livermore. How did that all come to pass?
I don't think you can tell the story of Crawdad Republic without the story of Shape and Sound.
So let me timeline it real quick. Normal Like You fizzles out. I decide to make an album. I think I put it out in 2008. I still have 800 copies. If anyone listening wants one, please try to email me or something.
Or info at Livermore Live Music.
Make great coasters. At any rate, the album was called Of Shape and Sound. I met up with Dusty Boyle, foundational piece of Crawdad Republic, best musician that we know, best human that we know. And so we got together, and he tried to help me make this record sort of sound like the record. Did not at all. And then we kind of evolved into let's just do our own thing. Started playing, kind of this rock sort of deal, and added other people to the band. Brandon Olivo, who was from Normal Like You, jumped on as well. That's where Dave comes into the picture. We're done with college. We're all kind of back united. I think the Wild Vine plays a critical role.
Yeah.
So there was a wine bar in town, which I know that y'all remember, called the Wild Vine, which became sort of this place to experiment and sort of almost this live open mic sort of atmosphere. But we would kind of just experiment and book the night and do our thing and have fun. And so this band kind of evolved to add horn players, drummer. We got Adam Elliott, an incredible drummer who played in various bands throughout our upbringing. So he joined the deal. We got Brandon, and then we had a bunch of horn players as well, which rotated from
being a trumpet player. That's what I loved about Of Shape and Sound was the horns and that
absolutely
was awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was super fun. If we could keep talented horn players like always come into play, like I don't think we'd ever stop doing that, because like horns live is the coolest thing ever.
So cool.
Yeah.
But it's really hard, honestly, and not even horn players. It's hard to have 8 people playing a band, period.
Of course, yeah.
It's hard to have 3.
And this was
you know?
before anybody had kids or like a real life. You know what I
Understand,
mean?
yeah.
We were still.
So
But
honestly,
eventually this morphed to Crawdad Republic.
so this is how it happened, really. I mean, like,
Yeah. So so around this time, I'm realizing, because I'm an electric guitar player by like. You know what I mean? If you were to
Right.
give me, I'm the most proficient of a musician on electric guitar.
Yep.
But then I was like, well, everyone and their mom plays a guitar. So I picked up the mandolin. I was starting to sort of get into some more bluegrassy stuff.
yeah.
So they actually found a place for me in Of Shape and Sound playing the electric mandolin, which was simultaneously the most fun and the dumbest thing I've ever done. But I mean, like I had bought like all of my parts were like one note, just like,
yeah, ding.
but I didn't care because I could just dance super hard. But during that time, I had learned how to play mandolin. I wouldn't say well, but like passably. So I could play mandolin, and then we were really just like getting hot on bluegrass stuff, specifically the singing aspect of it, and how the dynamics of playing with acoustic instruments. You know what I mean? Because when we
Yes.
first started, it was just the 4 of us, right? Dusty
Right.
on stand-up, Brandon on banjo, me on mandolin and guitar, and him on guitar and mandolin.
Right.
So I mean, at least for me, this is how I felt. So we really started getting down, and Johnny had written, I think, Iceberg Meadows and one other song that we were sort of playing in that setup. And then I wrote We're All Gonna Die shortly after. And then we just got super fired up. We're like, oh man, there's something
Sounds
about
good, right.
this, right? And this is a really good base to sort of showcase what at least my favorite part of the whole thing is, and that's the singing aspect, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really good base because it supports and is beautiful, but it doesn't take away from sort of the vocals. Where sometimes, you know, if you got like screaming guitars and all sorts of
Sure.
stuff, you can get lost in the fray, and what you have to say in that format when you're singing, when you're talking, you know, lyrically. You can hear it, and people can hear what you're saying, and you feel like there's more gravitas to the words at that point. And I think all those things sort of gelled, and I know that John and I kind of conferred on a bunch of tunes, and then we were like, meh, let's get pumped up. We're like, Brandon, learn to play a banjo. So here's how it works. And we're talking pre-Doug era, but Brandon and Dusty are super good, and
Yes.
John and I are good.
we do the best we
Ish.
can. I mean,
You know what I mean? So we were like, Brandon, learn to play banjo. And like a week later, he's like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And then
he's very talented.
and
yeah.
then Dusty was like, I'll just learn to play stand up.
Yeah.
And it was like same timeline. So we're like, I guess we have a thing now, you know? And
Right.
so we kind of stared booking shows, or at least that's how I remember
I
it.
mean,
No, that sounds about right. Yeah.
the last little go back and then go before the fjord.
Re-in before it,
The
please.
fjord's coming. So when I go before, we have to go back first.
Okay.
And when we go back, I went to college at UC Davis, and I met these cats who are now like the band Big Sticky Mess. Awesome
Oh,
band, play
yeah,
at
yeah,
Two Day
yeah,
Town.
yeah.
So I met them, and I met Patrick because I played on the ice hockey team with Patrick, and Patrick's the bass player, Big Sticky Mess. At the time, was a guitar player in a funk band. I move in with this funk band. I end up playing saxophone in this funk band. A subsidiary of that is we start this other sort of like folk project called Quicksand Marching Band. We're sort of doing this, and simultaneously also Of Shape and Sound is coming out and playing in Davis. And then it just starts becoming this thing where like, we don't want to bring amps and like a bunch of horn players and drums and everything. Like, let's just oversimplify it so that we can get together in someone's bedroom and play some music.
Right.
And that, to me, that's kind of how Crawdad Republic started. It just, you know, the natural...
Well, that makes a lot of sense
way
because
life
to me,
takes you.
I mean, you guys have so many things going for you, but I think to someone who doesn't know you well and listens to your music, they would say, well, the two things that distinguish you are sort of the folk rock, a little bit blues influence, but
It's hybrid. It's
yeah, and also then your vocal harmonies, right? Those two things characterize what became Crawdad Republic, and so now it starts to make sense to me, like how that all came together. You've mentioned Doug Allen a couple times. So how did he?
Who's Doug?
Yeah. How did he enter into the fray of Crawdad Republic?
I feel like you avoided the question.
I'll take this one. Doug, so when we started our budding public school teaching career, John was teaching, and we were singing a lot, we were playing a lot, and he actually developed a vocal node. So he had doctor's orders, like no more singing. So we were like, what do? We have all these shows booked, and he was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. So Doug, who produced our albums, and someday, because I know he's listening, we'll produce the third one that we started.
But he was also
Wait. There was a dramatic pause there for a reason. And someday he will produce the third one.
Dramatic.
Oh, there it is.
Was like, I'll just be Johnny. And then we were like, cool. But he wasn't about to sit there and sing with just a microphone. So we were like, let's bring in the keys and do the whole thing.
Got it.
And then the way I remembered it, and Doug can correct me if I'm wrong.
He actually can't because he refuses to be on the camera.
But then I was like, well, dude, check this out. And then we kind of started writing songs and then like putting piano parts in them, like run around sort of like, and then we're just like, oh, sorry, man. Now you're just like in the band, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So to be fair though, Doug has I have a long history with Doug. I mean, like Normal Like You would play with his bands in high school.
You have to mention Flashover, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Shallow, Flashover,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, like fast forward a few years, Doug is a Normal Like You before in the band Neural. So Doug actually replaces Brandon from Crawdad Republic in Normal Like You at one point, and then Brandon replaces himself.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole fun game. You
There's
know what I
a
mean?
flow chart. It's actually on the
it's
website.
like the Game of Thrones
it
flow
looks like a
chart.
spaghetti
It's fun.
mess.
And so you know, I mean, I've had such a good, amazing relationship with Doug, and he's incredible. He's the unsung hero of the Livermore live music scene because he's there. He just doesn't want to be on the camera.
Right. Well, I think he's a pretty talented musician.
Well, he's a pretty talented human.
Yeah,
you know,
all those things.
I mean,
given
he turned out really well given his upbringing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though,
Shout out
man,
KA.
that guy's mom is so hot. Holy crap!
Yeah.
So Doug, he's been an incredible part. He's recorded all the Crawdad Republic albums. He's also produced them, so he's had a heavy hand on the songwriting, kind of smoothing out the abrasive sort of places in which we needed a helping hand, right? And so it just worked, right? We put some pieces in where he would be playing on them, and so all of a sudden he's in the mix, you know?
Right.
And that's how that came to be. Simultaneously for the second album, so Crawdad Republic 1 was exclusively Dusty Boyle, Brandon Olivo, myself, and Dave. And then we started playing with Doug, and we also started playing with Adam Elliott, again, this drummer from Of Shape and Sound, jumping back in, and it just sort of worked, you know? And so that's what became Crawdad Republic 2, and then in the future, you know, that's where we're looking at, you know?
And you have that third album in the mix.
It's written
of things, right? That you're doing.
Well, you know, it's so funny. It's like we have enough songs written for it, but in the past, it's just like because of our lives, it's so busy. It's like we have 10 songs, and now, we have 10 songs, and now we have an album. But you know, nowadays, it's kind of like, well, we got 10 songs, but these next couple of songs are better than the last couple of songs. So it's like, you know, it's that cycle of being a musician. It's like, you know, it's never good enough, and it never will be.
It's the competition between like the perfect being the enemy of the pretty darn good.
Totally.
And so that's where we're at now.
So, how would you guys like to come into my corner?
Sure.
Okay. Kevin's corner.
Kevin's corner.
Are we gonna actually?
Is this a metaphorical corner, or do I have to get up?
Wait,
it's a metaphorical.
Can I roll for Arcana?
It's like Dungeons
Can I roll
and
for
Dragons.
Arcana real quick?
I'd like to roll for perception, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Kevin's corner is a kind of a segment where we take a deep dive into stuff. So we're gonna and taking a deep dive into Dave is scary.
It's cool, man.
I like that.
But it's all good.
Yeah,
so,
I'll sit back.
So what kind of drew you guys to music? What really, you know, what was the impetus? I mean, John already talked about, you know,
his
dad
introduction
and
to
stuff like that, and then the music festivals. But what about you, Dave?
I like to, and given my profession, this plays to my strengths, I like to be in front of people being loud. No, I
You
think
should have a voice for that.
Seriously, I'm surprised.
but no, I think it's funny, kind of going back to what we were just talking about with the albums, right? Like we work really hard on our tunes, and the tunes are all like really personal tunes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're really, really personal tunes. So we always have this dichotomy when we play of like, hey, we don't want like the message of the tunes to get muddled in the circus that can sometimes be our show.
Right.
But we also have, and this is a circuitous way to get back to your question, we also have the ability, or the not the ability.
Opportunity?
No, it's a problem. It's a negative I'm looking for.
Issue.
Yeah, we also have a thing where like we can't let a crowd like down.
We have
You
the
know what I
frown.
mean? And so it's like if we get like a show is only there if a crowd is involved. Like we don't like the idea, depending on the venue, of playing music at people. It's like, oh man, you guys came, like you're here and we're here together. And so I think that's sort of the deal. Is it's like something for me that I'm like, oh man, if I'm leading a song and everyone in the room knows the words to that song and we're singing that song, like I'm not a religious guy at all, but that's the closest thing that you can get to that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And so I think while, when I was 10 years old, it was to pick up chicks at the Roanwood pool, which I never did better than
Because
my
your
dad.
dad was your dad.
I think ultimately, like with some wisdom and some hindsight, looking back, I've always thrived on being like, all right, how can we get people to congregate? How can we get everybody in the room having a good time, making sure that everybody feels included and that nobody feels as though like, I don't ever want someone to look at us play or whatever and be like, oh man, like that could never be, because I want you to be so in the moment and participatory that like you are part of it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
Which shows in your performances, by the way.
oh, thanks. So I think that's sort of the spark that got me, that
That's
drew
your
me
inspiration.
to it. Yeah.
is using music as a vehicle to get that synergistic relationship with whoever you're in front of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it probably started with a teenage ego of like, everybody look at me, but I think that's where it evolved to eventually.
Right.
So this is for both of you. Who inspires you? Who inspires your music and just inspires you in general?
I mean, to be honest, this guy inspires me a lot.
I was going to say the same thing, but
I know that's corny. That's a corny thing.
I'm getting teary-eyed over
I
here.
know that's a corny thing to say, but like again, like we're at this situation where we just like explained, we want to have fun when we're playing tunes, but at the same time, like we have something to say, and we're real serious about that, you know. And so, like, when this guy writes a song, like, it makes me want to write a better song. You know what I mean? Like, and I love the fact that we can play, and I can be in a band with someone that inspires me in that way.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, to be honest,
I
like,
have that.
well, yeah, I know. And again, and y'all have a really like healthy situation in that, right? And that's a good thing. It's not necessarily a competition. It's more like, damn, that was
right.
good. Let's
right.
keep that going, right? Like, I gotta.
But
now,
it's hard to find those relationships in your life.
exactly.
Oh, man.
And so when you find them, it's it's a miracle.
I
It's a
gotta tell
blessing.
you,
Yeah.
we are so lucky in that. I mean, just seeing other bands. Look, there's always band politics, right? Like everybody talks about it, it's like being married, but like. My bandmates are my best friends. You know what I mean? And that's not that's not lip service. Like I would take a bullet for any of these guys. I grew up with most of these guys. The guys who I've not grown up with, I have spent the last decade making music with, and now you know what I mean. Like we're going to the hospital to visit each other's kids when they're born, and I would say, like as far as group dynamics go and interpersonal relationships go, like we have some of the best communication skills. That where I'm always like, dang, if I could use this anywhere else in my life, it would be so great. You know what I mean?
I think that's actually a reason why live music, not just in Livermore, but everywhere, is an important thing. Right. Otherwise, you could just go and listen to a stereo, or you could go to a bar and they'd turn the stereo on and you could hear note for note, the great recordings. But it's because in general, it's not always true, but in general, bands tend to be people who found each other and get along with each other, and they have an energy about them, and the audience likes that. And then you guys are particularly good at engaging that and bringing them into that. And it's a feeling, it's a human feeling that people like, and that's why live music is an important and great thing.
And as you two know, and as we know, it's not peaches and cream all the time. You know what I mean? It's
right.
like being married to, in our case, 6 people. You know, and you got to work at that. You know, and if you don't, like your art suffers.
Yeah,
you know,
and everybody. I mean, John and I are the loudest ones, but everybody.
So we're apologizing the most.
Yeah, we definitely apologize. But everybody, I would say, is equally strong-headed. They just are like, you know, and so figuring out like how each of us work and, you know, making sure we're giving people space and when they need it and like kind of pushing them when they don't. And you know what I mean? That's something that's not easy to do. And it just kind of worked out. You know what I mean? It's been a really cool
So
thing.
I'm intruding on Kevin's corner a little bit as I tend to do.
A lot of it.
Casey?
Yeah, but I will say that's one of the things about Crawdad Republic that I think impresses me and should impress a lot of people is you have a bunch of great singers and a bunch of great songwriters and a bunch of great, you know, musicians who have chosen to stay together and make great music together. Not very many bands do that, but you're truly an ensemble band in a world where that doesn't happen very much.
Well, it's really simple. I mean, how many other bands have a flag?
That's right.
More to that later. I just want to add one more
come.
thing is that I will say the most meaningful piece of feedback I've ever gotten about our shows, and I've received it several times, is I've had a few random people, usually people who are a little bit older, come up and say, it's very obvious that you guys love each other.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was
you give
like,
each other space.
That's true.
Yeah.
I will comment also, by the way, a lot of people don't know, but ensemble is from the French word ensemble. That means ensemble. That means my part's not big enough.
Hey, I think it's a good time. This is broadcasted live, right? Because we need Dusty. If you're watching, we would like a ride home, please. I'm just kidding.
on,
Sorry.
Dusty.
Shout out Dusty.
I'm not drinking today.
Shout out Dusty. You guys talked about I don't know if you remember, way back before Rob interjected. You were talking about your songwriting and everything like that. And I was wondering if in your songs, are there any hidden meanings? I mean, you're very much storytellers. You both tell stories in your songs, and they're very emotional sometimes, and sometimes very entertaining and funny, humorous stories. But are there any hidden things that just reading the lyrics or hearing the lyrics you wouldn't know about? That you would like to share?
Yeah, no, I would say, well, I mean, I know this is sort of like a stock answer, but I think it's true, and John and I have sort of talked about it at length, is that we kind of like to shy away. I mean, we'll tell each other what we meant just because, like, we live in that circle, but I think, and you might feel differently, but we kind of like to shy away from dictating what the song means, because if you took something from it that was different than what I meant, like, because I'm coming from a super personal experience that's personal to me, and I'm sort of trying to express that in a way that is like conveying a feeling that most people can feel and have felt, you know what I mean? But that is not specific to my situation.
Yes, right.
And so I feel like you cheapen that experience a little bit by being like, yo, this song is about the time like my girlfriend left her shoes out in the hall and I was so mad.
Yeah.
No,
That song is called My Girlfriend Left Her Shoes Out in the Hall, by the way.
point.
It's on Crawdad 3.
I'm not looking. I'm not looking for that kind of level of what's that song about. But is there a deeper meaning to your songs than what is just?
I love that question, and I love Dave's answer, and I'm gonna probably say like something synonymous to that, because yeah, absolutely, yes. You know what I mean? Like, I think when you write a song, as you both know, as being amazing songwriters, we're at a table with great songwriters, so we can scold to that.
Cheers, man.
What I'll say to that, and I know
Dave's running a little light there.
See, this is what brotherhood looks like.
to the Republic. Oh, well, now I need some.
Okay,
no,
right.
I'm just kidding. So I think the deal with that is absolutely, right? Every song is deeply personal. And, I think a part of it is trying to hide some of the meaning, because
It's true.
Right? I mean, I think a part of the art is trying to say, like, you know what? I really want to say something. At the same time, like, the way I like to create art is if you want to know what it is, you got to spend some time with it. Like, I don't want to make something, like, as much as I want to be authentic, like, I put a lot of thought into what I want to say. And so when I write it down, it may seem dumb, it may seem, you know, simple, but, like, to me, it's not. It's like,
right.
it's complex, you know? And I would love to people to get to all the way tapped into the matrix with it. But if they don't and they think, like, hey, this is fun and I like to bob my head, yes, like, that's awesome too, you know? I would love to make a song. I think we all would, right? Is that, like, people could, if they want, spend a lot of time with it and really question things and ask questions. And to be honest, I would love to answer, like, any of those questions with anybody, like, in one-on-one conversations. But, like, where Dave's at, I don't want to broadcast, like, oh yeah, here I will if it's.
I'm in the same spot, you know, right? Writing songs, you know, they have a personal meaning to me that may not be evoked, you know, out into the ether, but there is that. That's kind of what I wanted to get at, is that there's a deeper meaning to songs, and I agree totally with Dave that you don't want that. You want them to take away from it something that's personal to them, not what you felt, but what you inspired them to feel about it.
Well, I am still trying to figure out the deeper meaning to dead skunk in the middle of the road, though. I know there's something there.
Literal.
Yeah.
Well, and that's good too. Literal songs have a deeper meaning.
Right,
you know?
they do.
I actually struggle with that. I struggle with not being literal. I have a hard time obfuscating things that I write about.
What's wrong
Shout
with
out
that?
vocabulary.
Yeah. Obfuscating. That's
Obfuscating.
right. We have a good friend.
Way to make your podcast accessible, bro.
Right.
Hey, the buttons have been a little lackluster. I'm just going to make a comment right now to the button.
It's because we started talking about Doug.
There we go.
Have you guys ever had performance anxiety? Have you ever? Has that ever come into play? I can't imagine Dave would ever have.
Yeah.
Up front, I did, I think. Up front, I did. I don't know. I can't speak. I mean, we've been doing it for so long now. The first time, twice in recent, like, memory have I had performance anxiety. And the first time, they were both at the Bankhead. So the very first time we played the Bankhead, and then when we played to the sold out Bankhead, because that's very different than what we're used to, right?
I can't imagine.
Yeah, so I mean, imagine you've been to some of our shows, and they're usually very fun and lighthearted, and, you know, a little bit loose, and then you go to the Bankhead, and they're like 10 minutes to the top of the show,
right?
And, like,
well, then you come out on the stage.
Well, then you stand on the side, right? And you, like, are looking at each other, and you can hear everybody, and then some dude with a, you know, walkie-talkie is like, "All right, bring down the house lights and introduce the band," and then you go out and it's lights and you can't see anything, and you do the, like, I guess I wave like this move, and then you stand up there and then it's dead quiet and you can hear everything, and it's just people sitting down being like, "What do you got?" Like, at least normally at our shows, I'm like, well, dude, if I biff a solo, I can make a super funny joke after and make up for it. Like, you know, the Bankhead's not for jokes.
Right.
Good. Rob will never play there.
I would just mention that, you know, performing. Oh, don't say never. What are y'all doing on New Year's?
Yeah. I know the band is headlining.
Yeah, maybe we can squeeze you in.
We're going to talk about that in just a second.
All right, good.
We will.
So I would say, you know, I've performed for a long time, and Dave and I both have the job of teachers. So we stand in front of people, we talk. So I think because of much experience with that, I don't have a lot of anxiety getting in front of people. Which could also be bad, right? Because it can make you maybe not as prepared as you need to be in those moments, right? But I will say, I think that I do get anxiety from the moments in which we're not sort of maybe just doing our thing, but where we're really trying to, like, be responsive to the room. And it's synonymous with teaching as well, right? You're only as good of a teacher as you can respond to your students' needs. So I think we really, like, passionately, like, take that into, like, a performance. When we play live, we really are trying to scan the room and feel the room and say, okay, what do we need to do right now? Because although I love to play this super passionate, like, sad song that I want to spill my heart out and connect with y'all, maybe it's not the right time, and maybe it's time for, like, Cotton Eye Joe.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we just had to learn for a wedding. Shout out wedding.
I will say,
Hashtag wedding, yeah.
I will say that we definitely have a thing. So, I mean, like, I can't speak enough to this, and we should get into this because I have a whole soliloquy that I want to say about it.
Well,
shout out soliloquies.
All right, well, so
it's right up there with obfuscation.
Yeah,
we got the vocabulary section, bottom right.
Yeah, the
Thanks,
the hometown crowd. I mean, like, God, we could not be more grateful, and like, I hope they know how much we appreciate them and how much this community means to us. But on the other side of the coin is we like playing for people who have never seen us before and winning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Being like,
Bringing them
oh
over.
man, we're going to be over here. And I would say one of the best examples of that was the USS Hornet. When we got hired to play for the Marine Corps annual ball, I forget what it was, but they were not used to they were not used to having a live band.
A bluegrass country
especially,
rock.
Especially a band like us. And we played like, first of all, playing on an aircraft carrier with a bunch of fighter jets and Marines in their dress blues with swords is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
That was cool. And playing in a fjord in Alaska was cool too. We should get to that. So we're up there and we play like 6 songs and we're like, dude, nobody, what do we do? You know what I mean? Like nobody, they're all looking at us like.
The average face was.
Yeah, the average face was very, very military. And
but
so
this was like only
for our radio listeners.
So Marines can drink, right?
Yeah. So
and this was only like 3 beers in. So they're like, whoa.
So all of a sudden I look at John and John looks at me and like usually we loosen up when after like 2 songs when somebody biffs something super hard and then everybody laughs at him and then we're good. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But we're sitting up there and I look at John and he looks at me and we're like, we gotta get the girls on the floor, man. That's it. We gotta do it. So we
get
like
people out dancing.
Yeah, right. So we played a cover that we knew like most of the girls would respond to. They did. Next thing you know, Marines are dancing. Then they do party, and I promise you this is true, and you can vouch. By the end of the night, I had 40 Marines in dress blues with swords on, holding hands, doing the hokey pokey.
Yeah, right.
On an aircraft carrier in front of fighter jets.
And that's where
I was just like, we won the party.
Yeah.
We won.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a couple of things I want to make sure we touch on. So quickly, you guys are so involved in the community, and that's really important, right? You're not just a band; you're out there trying to make Livermore a better place. John, you were the ringleader of Love Livermore Live, which was a benefit for the music programs, here in Livermore. Tremendous thing. You're hoping to make that an annual event, right?
Yeah. Shout out Johnny Williams.
Shout out, right?
Shout out Johnny.
We've mentioned it on this show a few times before, but I just have to say, 2 Day Town is a big deal. One of Livermore's gems. It's maybe not as well known as it should be, but it's a big deal. You're centrally involved in putting 2 Day Town together, as was your dad before you. So, shout out for all that. We are getting ready to put together a compilation album called On Stage by Livermore Live Music, which is just trying to find another way to promote and encourage and recognize the incredible original music by these live music performers in Livermore. You and me and Kevin and other people are working on trying to put that thing together. So, thank you guys so much for being so involved with that. Your plans for 2020, I know you have so many things in the works. So I'll stop talking and let you respond to these. But you've got your 3rd album coming up.
Doug?
Yeah, right. So I'm sorry, it may not be clear, but the Doug that we keep referring to, Doug Allen, is the Doug of Advanced Creative, right? Same guy.
And of Crawdad Republic.
And of Crawdad Republic.
And of your loins.
And his, amen, yeah, right, yes. And his buddy and partner, John. Yeah. But Doug and John McConaughey, right? I mean, they've put this incredible studio together and they do this incredible video production, music production stuff that they do. Also, you've got a performance at the Bankhead. You've mentioned that, but you're playing on New Year's Eve at the Bankhead for the 3rd time, I think?
Second
time, right.
Yeah,
okay.
But
time. That's going to be awesome. And you've got 2 Day Town 2020 coming up, and I know you're deeply involved in putting all that together. I don't know if anything I just said sparks something you want to respond to.
Sure. I think a couple of things. I want to go all the way back to the beginning of the conversation where I kind of mentioned, like, I grew up going to these music festivals, and to be honest, like, they were sort of these bluegrass folk, but not limited to that. Specifically, the Strawberry Music Festival, and I think that kind of birthed Crawdad Republic, like the sound and the inspiration behind the acoustic instruments and doing what we're doing. And 2-Day Town started happening in 1999. It was called Festival del Arroyo. 2000, 2-Day Town started. And 2-Day Town was basically like a version of that, but that we now had stake in the game, like we could be a part of it, because now I'm born in 85, so now I'm a teenager, you know, getting into this mix. And so it was an important part of my life, and I hope it to be an important part of our kids' lives, right, and our kids' lives, and our kids' lives. So again, as you've shouted out on this podcast before, like best kept secret. And, you know, we hope to sort of keep it that slow growth, like everyone needs to get it, but like we want people to know about it and come out and support it. So that's something that we're really passionate about, and I'm working on, and it's coming forward. The Bankhead Theater 2020, we're super humbled and honored to be a part of. That is something that, like, as kids from this town, I know Dave's from Cape Cod, but pretty much from this town from 5th grade on. And as kids from this town, like, that like to play guitar just on couches and hang out and have fun, like, playing at a theater that's like the legitimate venue is just like, I mean, we can't say enough about
where
that.
we've seen some of our own idols, you know, come through town and play there. And so to have been invited and then to actually have had people come out was really, really amazing. So,
and I want to acknowledge the Bankhead Theater management for what they've done there, right? Because there's a couple of big venues in Livermore that have like nationally known, internationally known performers come out and play. Bankhead's one. You know, we've seen Mark Cohn and you know, all these tremendous acts come out there. But they also support the local music scene. They don't have to, but they do. Yeah. And they had.
Well, we got to shout out Scott Kennison for
big
that
time.
Because he's been just an amazing part of like amplifying the community's voice.
Right.
And to be honest, Dave and I sat on the board of the Livermore Valley Education Foundation for a few years, and we were really trying hard to raise money for kids, and he just, I mean, never even questioned anything we wanted to do. He just only said, what can I do to support?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, in life, leadership should be that statement. What can I do to support you?
Right.
Like, I trust you. What can I do?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've been very fortunate to be in the graces of these amazing people and have these experiences where we could play on the stage. And so in 2020, you know, we're looking to do it again, and we're excited because we have 2 albums now, and we're working on this 3rd, and we've got a lot of songs that we're really passionately excited about, and we're going to be performing a lot of them. So we're still. Plus, if you come out on Bankhead 2020, like, you are still out and about.
This is an important point.
What is it? Champagne reception. The brute reception is 10 o'clock, and then you're out.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so.
In fact, I'm going to use a phrase that I heard you use on the Bacchus Brothers one, and I will say that the show's from 8 to 10, and then the champagne reception is on fleek.
On fleek.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's so good.
It's French.
Yeah, so it's cool because you can come, right, and you can stay. We play for about 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And there's a intermission and stuff, and then afterwards there's a champagne reception. I want to say reception.
It's a champagne reflection.
It's a reflection on
everyone
champagne.
picks up a mirror. They talk about their year.
Everyone just reflects on the times that they drank champagne. No, but and then you're out and you want to roll down to another party.
Well,
you got 2 hours till the ball drops.
And there's a whole bunch of places that have got live music on New Year's Eve. Yeah.
Totally.
First Street Ale House has Bacchus Brothers. Episode 3, if you haven't checked it out.
Yeah. That's what we did
Episode
last
3.
time. It was awesome. We played and then quickly packed up our stuff and went to the ale house and just watched Bacchus. We were like, what a better way to go.
By the way,
they're doing that again this year.
Yeah, I don't know. Are they?
No, I think they're. Yeah.
He said it on your podcast.
Yeah, it's also on Livermore Live Music.
Oh, really? I was there. Huh?
I have to say about French. So I recently have had occasion to try to learn French a little bit. No, I'm serious. I'm trying to learn to speak French, a little
Button
bit.
alert.
And so I didn't understand this before, but in French, typically the last letter of a word is not pronounced, right? So S-A-L-U-T is pronounced salut. It's not salute, it's salut.
But isn't it salute?
No, it's salut. That's
Isn't
Italian, right?
Okay.
But in French, it's salut. And often in French words, it's the last 2 letters that are not pronounced. So I've decided that in my dialect of French, I'm not going to pronounce any of the letters. Then I can speak French flawlessly. Like, watch.
That was
All right. Here's where you messed up.
Here's where it went off the rails.
Here's where you messed up. Here's where you messed up. You had a huge opportunity with occasion. Like I was learning on occasion, I learned to speak French. There's something there, bro. You got to figure that out.
Yeah,
that was really messed up.
My
man.
bad.
tune in next month.
Yeah. God. So
They're
I'm
going to
actually
review that in Kevin's corner.
I'm actually
We're going to go deep into the joke.
We're gonna deep dive that joke.
yeah, no, I'm smiling, but I'm actually very, very disappointed.
So I want to mention also before we finish up here that
Finish up. We're just getting going.
Yeah, we're just starting. Everyone in Crawdad Republic you're not only great musicians and you have a great band, but you're also all contributing to the community in incredibly special ways.
Thanks for mentioning that. I think that one thing about our band that I think we do put out there, but I'm happy that we have opportunity to speak on it, is that, one, we're passionately like songwriters. We love creating art. We want to create something to connect with people, and it's an outlet that we feel so humbled and fortunate to get the opportunity to do. And forget about the rest of the world. Like, our community is amazing, and we love this community. And if 5 people care about it, then we already won. Like,
well, and it's the reason we get to do what we do, right? Like, this community coming up as kids, they could have been like, psh, whatever, man, and they were like, why don't you play here? Why, I'll open my doors and have a bunch of 14, 15-year-old kids play, So
Yes.
on that front, and I'm sorry if I stole your thunder there, but I feel like we now sort of feel the obligation to sort of pass the torch and make sure that the things that were in place that allowed us to do the thing that we love and connect with so many people are not only in place, but better than they were, even though they were great than when we came up. So I think that's the impetus behind a lot of what we do.
Specifically, like, again, like, to bring it to an example, my father, Kenny Williams, played music when I was a young kid at the Popcorn Factory, which was and became the First Street Ale House.
Right.
And then they purchased the location next door. But what happened was, I was a child going and performing art, right? He had 2 bands that continued to play. Panama Bay across the street became Panama Red. But it was this fuel that fanned this fire. And now, as Dave said, we feel it's our responsibility to continue to illuminate this pathway for kids and for people in Livermore, because, if they want to make it a career, great. That's awesome. But if they just want to make it a place for their soul, a place for their heart to be themselves, like, the community's got their back, and we want to help support that cushion,
Right. Right.
And so anytime we can be involved with an opportunity to raise money for students, for music, for whatever we can, this isn't about making money. It's not. It's about sharing ourselves, our hearts, our souls,
right.
And it's also about supporting the next generation. And
about this incredible sense of community that, I'm sure it's not unique in Livermore, but it's certainly prevalent in Livermore, right? This sense of we're all in it together. We're all, trying to make things better. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will just add a personal note, and I know Kevin would echo this too. So I've known, all of you since you were younger. So the joke is, you guys probably tell each other, you say, oh, like back when you were in high school, Richard Nixon was president. When I was in high school, Richard Nixon actually was president.
Sorry about
I'm
that.
very sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But, you're all fine young men, and you've done incredible things to support this community. And I think of you all as my sons. One of you actually is. And I just
shout out Button Doug.
Yeah. And I just thank you all so much for everything that you've done and continue to do, for the community and for music here in the area.
It means a lot. It's I would want to mirror that just right back. Like, again, we're doing it because we're only in a position to do it because everybody put us in a position to do it.
But
so,
you work at it. You guys are good musicians, and you practice and you exercise your art, and that's why you're where you are today.
Well, thanks.
Is there anything else that we should have talked about? Questions you wanted us to
grab that
ask?
can real quick? Where's your camera? I need to just show it on live.
Okay. Here we
Y'all, Altamont Beer Works from Livermore, California is simply the best brewery in the United States of America. So if you haven't checked it out, go get down. If you're lucky enough to get a We're All Gonna Die IPA, I suggest you do it.
Right. And also by the odds, what are the odds that next to that are the second and the third best breweries in the United States, and yet here they are, right? So
They are.
fairly incredible.
And hey, we got some good wine too, I hear.
And some incredible distilleries, right?
Yeah, I've heard that too.
But most importantly, we've got something called livermorelivemusic.com.
Yeah.
So if you've made it this far to the episode and you've never checked out the website, please make sure that you do.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's an honor to be here. You know, my stepdad always told me that I wasn't going to be smart enough to be able to make it through grad school and make it here. And now one of us is a loser alcoholic that lives by himself, and the other one is planning a 3-week vacation to Hawaii with my mom.
Nice.
Which one is which? No, I'm sorry. That was cold.
That's well
I
placed.
get it.
That was well placed.
Yeah. That was actually a Rob joke.
Thank you.
You set that up. And it's getting it right.
I was trying to
thought it
beat
was
you at your
another
own game.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
No.
Well, so yeah, I'm also pleased to announce, and Doug, feel free to edit this, that we will be doing another Dungeons and Dragons podcast, hopefully, in
With
the
you
near
guys,
future,
yeah.
based on your request. So click on the link in the bottom
On the
right
link,
corner
that's
of your screen right now,
Before we go out, and
and email livermorelivemusic.com for your request for a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, and Dave and I will be back.
And we're also going to do an out-of-band spotlight on 2-Day Town that we're hoping to drop in
we got a
April.
huge plan
Yeah,
on
and that's going to be fantastic also.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Again, man, you guys, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming down. I wish the whole crew could have been here.
we bring out
Logistically
Doug?
not possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably not going to happen. But thank you so much for your time and for your honesty and openness.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thanks
you
for
know.
having
Yeah.
us, man. We're
Yeah,
honored
this
to
was
be
great.
here. Really.
This
Yeah,
was
this is super
absolutely
fun.
great.
All right.
Anytime you want us to talk about ourselves.
Yeah.
we're
And
down.
if you're out there listening to live music in Livermore and you get a chance to go see these guys, Crawdad Republic, definitely do it. Any live music in Livermore is fantastic.
Real
Thank
quick,
you so much.
though, why
yeah?
didn't you hear the pterodactyl go to the bathroom? The P's silent.
Oh, yeah. All right, hold on.
Rob, shout
I
out,
heard there was
Rob.
going to be a whole joke portion, so you throw this in wherever you want, but you don't get me to prepare jokes and then don't let me tell them.
Oh,
on
okay.
your
Dave,
podcast.
please. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm not asking.
Kevin's corner is going to break this down.
Dave's corner.
All right, so there are two guys, right? And they were in an insane asylum, and they both kind of decided that they didn't like being there. So one day they decided they were going to escape, right? So they spent a little while planning, and they finally escape, and their escape brought them all the way to the roof. Well, the first guy looks over, and he's like, "Oh man, there's a gap between the two roofs in this city, so I'm just going to go for it." And he jumps, and he makes it. And the other guy gets up there, and he's scared, and he's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. So the guy says, "Look, we're going to get caught. You got to do it." He says, "Listen, I'm going to take my flashlight and I'm going to shine the beam to the other side. And I just want you to walk over the beam to the next building, right?" And the first guy looks at him and says, "I'm not an idiot. You're going to shut it off when I'm halfway there." You get a free t-shirt from this podcast if you guess where I got that joke from.
Yeah. And with that, I think we have to be out. Thank you so much for
We're
listening.
done. Thanks, John. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Cheers.